What's going on, Tactical Mother Flowers? Welcome back to the Gutter Fighting Secrets podcast. Today we've got a really interesting guest coming on, Brad Jenkins. Brad is a master level Army Combatives instructor. I'm going to get to his bio here in a second, but stand by. This interview should be pretty freaking interesting if I do say so myself. Any of you interested in learning more about reality-based, real-world combatives as taught to our men and women in elite units of the military? Definitely stand by. All right, Mother Flowers, let's jump into it. Today, we are joined by a very special guest, Brad Jenkins. Brad has spent over 20 years of his life in the military. Brad has been a combatives instructor in the Kentucky Army National Guard. He's got over 25 years of experience in street-safe combatives. He has his formal training in Jeet Kune Do concepts under Paul Vanuc. Brad, am I saying that? Paul Vanuc?
That's Paul Vanek.
Paul Vanek. And so under Paul Vanek, Brad trained, and so he trained in 1996 through 2008. And in 2008, he was actually awarded his instructor certification under Paul. He's also been certified as Army Combatives instructor. In 2005, he became Kentucky's first Army Combatives Master Trainer. That was in 2014, if I'm correct, Brad.
That's correct.
Correct. All right. And he's managed the Kentucky National Guard's Combatives program since then, since 14. He's also trained in BJJ under Brian Jones since 2012 and continues to train under Brian and other instructors. So as a member of the Kentucky National Guard, Brad, you've had several deployments here, including Bosnia in 2003, Hurricane Katrina relief in 2005, and Iraq in 2006 and again in 2007. Oh, I'm sorry, 2006 through 2007 and again in 2011. And on the civilian side, bro, you've been training a lot of people, and you are doing active shooter training, full contact, pistol and knife fighting, personal security, church security, which I find interesting, and you've trained hundreds of military personnel, and as well as civilians in self-defense and self-defense fitness. Bro, that's a very impressive resume, man.
Hey, I appreciate it.
I appreciate you coming on, dude. So
yeah.
Let's start off here, man, because I know everyone's going to be interested in this. What is a Army Combatives Master Trainer? How do you get to that level?
Okay, so prior to 2014, there was 4 levels in the Army Combatives program. Level 1, Level 2, Level 3, and Level 4 is basically what they called them. I went through Level 3. I went through Level 1 in 2005. I was scheduled for Level 2 in 2006. Didn't get to go. Got deployed to Iraq. Spent 16 months in Iraq. Finally got back. Had to change units because of transitions in the Kentucky Army National Guard. Finally got around to going to Level 2 in 2011. In 2013, I went to Level 3. That was at Fort Benning. Level 1 and Level 2 were in the state of Kentucky.
Okay.
Through our Level 4s that we had back then. And then in 2013, I had the opportunity to go to Fort Benning, Georgia for a month to basically just fight every day.
Nice.
And then in 2014, I got registered for the Level 4 course, which was more of just learning aspects of teaching and running the program and doing all the administrative paperwork, really. So when I got there, it was actually the very first pilot course for the Master Trainer course that the Army had ever done. So I was very fortunate enough to become Kentucky's very first master trainer. Now I think we have 4. Really, only 2 of us that are active and doing anything with it. But we've sent 4 or 5 guys through the master trainer course since 2014.
Outstanding, man. So what? Now you're saying that Army Combatives Master Trainer, you guys really are. You're certified in, everything, but you also take care of a lot of administrative purposes, paperwork, training, schedule, stuff like that.
Yeah, so that comes in when we do courses. The Kentucky National Guard does 2 courses a year. We do a level 1 and a level 2. We're just trying to get as many level 1 and level 2s out there in all the units throughout the state. Because every unit is supposed to have at least 2 level 1s to be able to train that unit. Mm-hmm. So we put those courses on in February and September of every year just to get certified trainers out there. So that's when all the administrative stuff comes in handy, and knowing how to run the courses, knowing how to do all the paperwork and the risk assessments and all of that.
Basically kind of the boring side of it.
Yeah.
So what is involved in Army Combatives? Can you give us a little bit of a breakdown for those of us out here who don't really know, who haven't served in the National Guard or the Army? What is incorporated in Army Combatives?
Okay, so the base principle that you're going to learn is a lot of jiu-jitsu type skills. Originally, the combatives program was taught to Matt Larson and a group of guys from 2nd Ranger Bat, 2nd Ranger Battalion. They went out to the Gracie Academy out in Torrance, California, and learned a lot of jiu-jitsu. And that's how they kind of put the program together originally. So you're going to learn some ground skills, but also you're going to learn a lot of stand-up and striking skills, because the main principle of the combatives program, and that's a big misconception a lot of people have, but the base of it and the main principle is to keep the fight standing and finish it standing if possible. And the reason we train in ground is, because a lot of fights end up on the ground anyway. And then also, we train in jiu-jitsu and wrestling type stuff to be able to just train and go hard every day. Yeah. And instill warrior ethos into soldiers, because, you got to be able to close the distance with somebody, grab a hold of them, and throw them around or sling them around, throw them into walls, things like that. And if you haven't done a lot of full contact stuff, which is where the jiu-jitsu comes into play, then you're less apt to want to grab a hold of somebody or close the distance with someone. So that's what the jiu-jitsu part of it really instills into you.
That's what I love about jiu-jitsu, man, is not only can you go hard every single day that you spar or fight, and number 2, it really gives you that, like you were saying, that warrior ethos to be able to close with that enemy and be able to kind of know, like, hey, I've been here before, I've done this, I'm going to be okay. Like, let me grab a hold of him and, like you're saying, throw him into the wall or, get up and close and personal with the guy.
Right, definitely. So one thing they found out, when we were going into Afghanistan, not me personally, but when we first, as the U.S., went into Afghanistan, you got all these real small houses and everything. And so, at basic training and in infantry training, they used to teach, you walk into a door and, you're doing room clearing or whatever, and you walk into a door. If you see a guy standing there with an AK, you start shooting at him. And if your weapon jams, then you take a knee and you let the guy behind you take him while you're doing your immediate action. But now once they went into Afghanistan, what they figured out was the rooms are so small, you don't have time for all that crap.
Yeah.
So you see a guy standing there with an AK, man, you slam him into the wall, start elbowing him in his face till his ears bleed.
Yeah, I like that, man. I like that whole just bucket, let's go and crush the guy. Don't even bother, don't even waste any time. Now, you
Right,
guys,
right. Yeah, you don't have time.
are you guys carrying a secondary at all that you can transition
Yeah,
to?
definitely. When we're outside the wire, you're definitely carrying secondary.
But nonetheless, I mean, I suppose rather than, in that small environment, rather than worrying about dropping your primary and transitioning, they want you to kind of just start putting hands on him.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So when you say that it's a lot of stand-up and try to keep the fight standing up, which, to be honest with you, man, I've always heard quite the opposite, about Army combatives being so grappling-based and that it's sports jiu-jitsu and all of this. This is kind of the first time I'm hearing that.
So the transition, it's always been, and like I said, that's the big misconception, especially with a lot of units that don't do it all the time and don't get into the fighting aspect of it. They a lot of guys in the guard or in the Army, especially in the guard or reserves, because they just don't get enough time hands on to do it. They hear the word combatives training and they're like, oh, that means get the now. Well, no, I mean, the combatives program involves boxing, kicking, judo throws, wrestling takedowns, and the program has changed several times over the year. The manuals have changed over the years. They changed really big in 2012.
That's what I heard, and you guys are adding in more.
A lot of the jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brad.
Well, no. So what I was going to say was in 2012 they took out a lot of the jiu-jitsu moves that you just wouldn't be able to do if you were in full kit. Even if you were a 20-year black belt, there was a lot of stuff you couldn't do in full kit. Meaning with your body armor and your Kevlar and all that on, you just wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah.
So they took a lot of that out and they simplified a lot of the moves that were effective. They just made it real effective if you did get taken to the ground with full kit on.
That's another thing about the jiu-jitsu aspect, and I did a video back in the day about Japanese jiu-jitsu versus Brazilian jiu-jitsu, what's the difference? And I thought it was curious that, jiu-jitsu was originally made or developed by the samurai, who were fighting in heavy-ass armor a lot like what we're wearing today. And it was meant and designed to fight another full samurai in full armor. And, hence the chokes, the joint breaks, all of that stuff. So I think it's curious nowadays that we're going back to, more grappling-based jiu-jitsu system because we're weighed down with the armor, we've got the helmet and all that crap on. It just makes sense. It's a lot more, I would think, it would be a lot more effective in full kit.
Oh, definitely. So if hypothetically, let's say I went to a unit and I only had and that's normally what I get. I only get about an hour, maybe 2 hours to train a unit. That's just maybe their annual training or during their drill or whatever. Or even if I was going to an active duty unit and teaching them for a couple hours, I wouldn't spend a lot of time. I would spend 30, 45 minutes on stand-up stuff, and then maybe I'd show them a couple of sweeps from the ground, maybe an arm trap and row on how to get someone off top of you. And then the only submissions I would teach would maybe be like a couple chokes.
Yeah.
I'm not going to teach like arm bar and all that crap. If I spent 6 months with them, then I would teach them an arm bar and things like that, just so they had things to train with.
Right.
But I wouldn't expect them to be able to. I wouldn't expect them to want to try to do something like that in combat.
Yeah, and that's what fascinates me about military training is it's direct and to the point, the simplest techniques that guys are going to be able to learn rapidly. How long does it usually take? I mean, from your personal experience, how long does it usually take a guy to become proficient enough in hand-to-hand combatives where he could survive a violent confrontation?
Oh my gosh. Man, you're putting me on the spot. Man,
It depends on the person, I would suppose.
Yeah, it definitely depends on the person and their background. And the biggest thing that I tell everybody is, if you're training, because here's a great quote from Dave Grossman, Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman, if you know who that is.
I'm not familiar.
Wrote the book On Killing and On Combat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not all his stuff I agree with, but he does have a great quote. And I'm going to paraphrase it. I'm going to screw it up a little bit, but it goes like, men do not rise to the occasion. They fall to their level of training. So if your level of training is one of my classes, or one self-defense class, or one day at the pistol range, if that's your level of training, then chances are you're going to fucking die out on the street, So, like I tell everybody, man, because on my Kentucky Army National Guard Combatives page that I run for the Kentucky Army National Guard and on Facebook and all that, I tell everybody when I train with them or when I meet them or whatever, I'm like, hey, man, shoot me a message on my page, and I'll find places for you to train throughout the state or depending on where you live.
Good.
And so, if you're gonna put me on the spot, I would say, man, you need at least a minimum of 6 months of hard training. Yeah. To be able to survive in a combative type situation out on the street or in combat, or and that training has to be full contact. Yeah. It has to be full contact every day. You don't have to be beating the shit out of each other, standing up boxing every day. But if your training doesn't involve you taking the risk of getting hurt every now and then it's probably bullshit.
I couldn't agree more with what you're saying right now, man. And that's what I always tell guys too, is if you're not getting injured, or at least have the risk, like you said, of getting injured while you train, you're not really training that well. I mean, you have to fight in order to learn how to fight. There's plain and simple. There's no way around it.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, and
if you're just doing a bunch of drills. Yeah. Sorry to cut you off. If you're just doing a bunch of drills, or if you're doing a bunch of katas, or whatever, I'm not knocking anybody's art. Because some people just study art to study art. But if you're telling me that it's for self-defense, or it's, people all the time put the hashtag combatives on a bunch of bullshit. Yeah. I see it all the time on Facebook and Instagram. Now hashtag combatives, where they're doing some bullshit drill or showing some bullshit move that just ain't gonna work on the street.
Another good hashtag I like, they like to use with that stuff is bodyguard.
Those same people have probably never been in a real fight.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, absolutely, and that's the cooperative martial arts for you. And you go in and you every 6 months you get another belt, another stripe on your belt, and you don't really ever spar. And if you do, it's like very light taps or whatever, taekwondo or whatever. And I'm not knocking taekwondo; it can be effective, but more often than not, you see guys in the cooperative martial arts with a black belt that have never been in a fight really in their life. And that's like I like about MMA, jiu-jitsu, even Muay Thai. Boxing is it's all full contact, or mostly full contact, and so you learn how to fight a lot more rapidly than other stuff out there at the McDojo.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So when you first started in boot camp, did you get any combatives training in basic training?
No, I didn't. Back then, they just weren't. They weren't doing it. Some places, even to this day, some places, depending on where a guy goes to basic training and what his drill sergeant's background is in combatives or experiences is in combatives, guys may only get a day or two. Wow. If you go to Fort Benning, Georgia, which is the home of infantry, you're probably going to get about a week worth of combatives training. But yeah, it just depends on where you're going and your drill sergeants and what they're like. For example, my son, he actually just, my 17-year-old son, 18-year-old son, he just turned 18. He went to basic training this past summer between his junior and senior year. And he got a couple of days of combatives training, at Fort Leonard Wood.
Man, I got to tell you, I think doing our guys a real disservice not to give them at least a week's worth of combatives training and then send them out there.
Yeah, there's pros and cons to it. Doing it at basic training. Prior to 2012, a lot of places were certifying them level 1 at basic training.
Huh.
The problem with that was the guys from Fort Benning, they would go over to the basic training side, after, right before guys were getting ready to graduate basic training or going other places, and they would, give them a little test. They would say, hey, show me this move or show me this technique or whatever, and guys couldn't do it. They just don't retain it enough in basic training.
Yeah.
They're so stressed out. They got a lot of crap going on, and if they don't like it anyway, and some guys don't like, they don't like it enough to want to teach it.
Yeah.
So if they don't like it enough to want to teach it, they're not going to try to retain it. Then, they get to their unit, they're like, hey, you're a level 1 combatives instructor. Show us some stuff. And either they say, nah, man, I don't know it well enough, or I haven't had opportunity to practice it, or they try to teach it, and they teach some bullshit that isn't what they were taught, at the schoolhouse.
That's a shame, man. I really am. Look, I mean, I don't think personally you should be certifying anyone level 1, instructor in just that short period of time. But hey, I understand it's kind of a bureaucracy, if I'm correct, huh?
Yeah. So just to give you a time frame on the levels, so level 1 is 5 days.
Okay.
So they get a crash course. I mean, they really do. But they get a manual to go home with, and we expect them to continue to train. I'll tell every guy all the time, go out and learn some jiu-jitsu. Go practice jiu-jitsu. Stay current on the art of combatives. So yeah, level 1 is 5 days. Level 2 is 10 days. In the master training course now, because what they did, they kind of combined level 3 and level 4, is it's 30 days. It's a month long at Fort Benning.
So you get 30 days straight of fighting every day.
Well, it's actually it's Monday through Friday for 4 weeks.
Okay.
So really 20 days.
But still, that's great. That's a lot of fighting right there, man. That's a lot of experience.
Yeah, man, you do a lot of sweating.
Yeah, I bet that's a tough course, man.
Yeah, it's very physically demanding.
So what is your overall, I mean, obviously you might be a little bit biased, but I know I'm also talking to a guy who's a JKD instructor, as well as other disciplines of reality-based combatives. What is your overall impression of Army combatives as far as preparing somebody, for a life and death struggle? Do you think that it's cutting it, or is there other things that they could potentially add, in your opinion, that would, be helpful to soldiers?
I think the approach that they really started taking, it started changing in 2012, like I said, and then in 2017 it changed again. The manual came out and it was all not brand new stuff, but they had cut out a lot of the BS. So I think they've definitely gone in the right direction as far as making it practical.
They're probably realizing from, experiences and AARs or whatever that guys are not succeeding with this stuff, and this stuff is actually working a lot better in the environments that they're in.
Right, yeah, definitely. And then also, one of the biggest things is that's really helped it improve, of course, Matt Larson, he's who we call the father of Modern Army Combatives program. Of course, he's a civilian now. He retired in 2005, I believe, from the Army. he's a 4th degree black belt, I believe, in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he started the modern combatives program. He calls it modern combatives now. He can't really use the term army, but everybody looks to him for advice and his training and all that. So he's actually up at West Point right now teaching the cadets and working with the professors up there on psychology and things like that. He's big into psychology and the psychology of fighting and all that. So because of his program and what he does now, he's certifying people as black belts, brown belts, and things like that in combatives. So, of course, it's a lot of jiu-jitsu training and a lot of stand-up boxing and judo and things like that. But the biggest improvement now for us is we have a lot of black belts to reach out to that are combatives instructors. Just about everywhere you go, on every base, one of the guys or two of the guys that teach combatives is also a black belt Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Oh, great.
One of my guys that's also a master trainer here in Kentucky that I've trained with on the civilian side, and also he teaches combatives with me when I do my courses. He's a 1st degree black belt in Jiu-Jitsu, and he's done some MMA fighting and done very well. So just having his expertise there, really helps. So that right there has really helped the program. I really can't knock the program at all. The biggest thing that I can say that would improve the program is if soldiers who are really interested in it and want to learn it, the biggest thing I can tell them is continue training in the full contact arts, jiu-jitsu, judo, maybe some Muay Thai. Go out and train. Don't just rely on your Army combatives training.
Yeah, and another thing I always kind of think about is, listen, if you have trained and maybe you've taken a break for however long, a year or whatever, you're going to be rusty. I mean, there's no way around it, especially if you're fighting another trained individual. You got to keep training.
You have to.
So are you guys also doing like weapons disarms, like a knife disarms in the Army combatives, that type of thing?
Yeah, we touch on it at level 2.
Okay.
So level 2 is more tactical. We touch on, knife defense, getting 2 hands on the guy's arm, and making sure he can't cut you. We talk about fighting with weapons, not really disarms.
Okay.
We get shock knives out and let guys do some knife fighting, and the shock knife makes it more realistic, obviously.
Yeah. How do you like those shock knives?
So, yeah, I love the shock knife. I mean, if 2 guys are fighting and one has a rubber knife or whatever, the guy without the knife is going to try some stuff or do some stuff that he wouldn't do if that knife was real.
Yeah.
So that shock knife adds the aspect of it being a little bit more real. It makes it more realistic.
Gives him that adrenaline rush.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, I was always big into knife disarms, and until I took one of Bill Wolf's courses. I don't know if you're familiar with Bill, but he teaches Defendo, World War II combatives out of Canada. And he's big on actually training with live blades. And until I started kind of training around with live blades, I was thinking, yeah, I'm really good. Like, I can do this fancy disarm and shit. But look, when it comes down to it and you're facing that cold steel and that shit's coming at you and it's real, and if you touch it, you get cut, all of your fancy techniques go out the window. You're left with very primitive, very basic stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So
one of the aspects about knife and gunfighting or anything like that when it comes to weapons that I try to get across to people is if that's all you rely on, like for example, you hear guys all the time, I know, say, well, I'm not doing any of that martial arts training or none of that jiu-jitsu bullshit or nothing. I'm just going to shoot him if he gets on top of me, if he grabs me, or I'm going to stab him or whatever. If that's all they rely on, and they haven't done any type of training as far as full contact, then they're probably not going to be able to unholster their gun or pull their knife out quick enough to really make it effective. And so a lot of the training that I've done some training with Aaron Little, who owns Performance Edge. As far as it teaches you the full contact knife and gunfighting stuff. Teaches you, and we touch on this in Army Combatives. You got to be able to create space to unholster your weapon. Mm-hmm. Because if me and you are standing next to each other, or within 6 feet, you pull your gun or knife on me, I'm gonna slam you to the floor. I'm gonna put you on your head.
Yeah. Yeah, guys get a false sense of security with that pistol, man, and I see it time and time again with guys with their CCWs. They don't want to train the hard stuff, MMA. Oh, that MMA's bullshit. I'll just freaking blast him. But you know what? I mean, it's totally different when you're in the real life confrontation.
Definitely, and then most of those same guys are the ones that don't even go to the range often enough to be able to get a good shot off on somebody.
Yeah, exactly. Nor do they train in any tactical schools of, I should say, tactical proficiency stuff as far as peeping around a corner or whatever. They kind of, if they go to the range, they'll stand there and la-di-da blast the target and then case their weapon up and go home. Right. But
shoot some paper targets and go home.
Think you're the Rambo king of the world there.
Yeah.
So from the Army's experience, I understand that the Taliban and all the terrorists over there they're actually pretty big on wrestling. They like to fight with those curved knives and stuff. Are we finding that these Talibans are, decent fighters when it comes to engagements, or are we kind of able to dominate in that area?
No, as a whole, we've dominated on the ground or any type of close quarter combat. We've definitely dominated.
That's good. I suppose that. Do you think that the reason is because we're just better trained than they are?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely, but you can never underestimate anybody. Obviously, you just gotta continue training and instill warrior ethos into yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Never stop training, and just when you think you've got it, you don't. That's been my experience.
Yeah, definitely.
So, if you want to talk to our audience, which, we've got military guys, we've got guys who are in security law enforcement, and then we've also got plenty of just civilians out there who want to make themselves better at being able to defend their families, defend themselves on the street. What would you tell guys out there who aren't serving actively or are just, wanting to learn a little bit more about how to defend themselves? What should they be studying? Is it MMA? Is it Krav? What is it?
Man, I always recommend everybody find a good jiu-jitsu instructor that is teaching the fighting aspect of jiu-jitsu. What jiu-jitsu, it goes back to exactly what you said at the beginning. Jiu-jitsu is meant as a fighting art for standing up, and closing the distance with a guy and grabbing hold of him, finishing the fight. So I highly recommend that you go out, you find a good jiu-jitsu instructor that also cross-trains a little bit, with either what we call grapple boxing, where you put gloves on, or maybe one guy puts gloves on and tries to throw some punches at your face, after you've gotten about, 6 months, I'd say about 3 to 6 months of training. If you've never trained jiu-jitsu, you definitely want some training before you let a guy just throw some gloves on. But a lot of guys, and I'm not trying to knock anybody off, because I know there's some sport grapplers out there that do sport that could handle their own in the street, without a doubt. But a lot of sport guys that only train in sport jiu-jitsu don't do any type of grapple boxing.
Yeah.
Or, they want to do what we call pull guard, which means they just lay on their back or sit right on their butt, and they just pull you into their guard. And what those guys forget and overlook is the fact that the guy that they're pulling in the guard in the street could punch him in the face.
Or punch him or kick him right in the nuts, man.
Right, like doing heel hooks and leg locks and things like that. Well, if you twist my heel or whatever, or put me in a knee bar, it's gonna hurt. And in competition, or while we're rolling around in the gym, I'm gonna tap. If you get me in a good heel hook or whatever, I'm gonna try to spin out of it. And if I can't, I'm not gonna risk getting injured because I got to go to work the next day. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna tap. But in the street, I'm probably gonna roll over and pull my pistol and canoe your head open. Yeah. Or I'm gonna try to kick you with my other leg in the face.
Yeah, and exactly, and so many guys out there who are doing jiu-jitsu are doing sports jiu-jitsu, and which, again, I'm not going to knock it either because it's still effective, but like you were saying, guys don't train in grapple boxing. They don't ever see what it's like to try to get hit while you're, trying to, escape mount or whatever, and they just don't understand how much more stressful it's going to be once, the rules are out the door and somebody's not worried about, like you said, going to work the next day or whatever. So I think the fact that you're recommending guys actually put the gloves on, and it doesn't have to be like punch your lights out, but it has to be realistic enough that you get that adrenaline dump. That, I think that's such great advice.
Yeah, definitely.
So from Jeet Kune Do to Jiu-Jitsu, that's kind of a transition, and I actually made the transition myself. I was doing Jeet Kune Do for maybe 4.5, 5 years before I started with Jiu-Jitsu, and I obviously thought that I was a force to be reckoned with until, the first couple months in Jiu-Jitsu where I was getting manhandled by guys, half my size, and it was a shock to my system. What do you think guys out there who are studying primarily stand-up stuff like Wing Chun, JKD, should they be cross-training in Jiu-Jitsu?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Definitely. And Paul Vornak, all of, functional JKD guys that are truly functional have cross-trained in Jiu-Jitsu. Dan Inosanto took JKD, from, after Bruce Lee died, Dan Inosanto took it and kind of ran with it and incorporated a lot of his Filipino martial arts into it. But he also said, in the, I'd say in the mid-'80s probably, I don't know exactly what year, but he also said, hey, we need to include this jiu-jitsu, this Brazilian jiu-jitsu that these Gracies are teaching, And so a lot of guys like Paul Vornak and all those other guys that were doing functional JKD instead of the original JKD, what they call JKD concepts. They all started training with the Gracies, Paul started training with Hicks and Gracie. And of course, I really didn't. I knew some jiu-jitsu moves, back in the late 90s. Of course, I didn't really start any formal jiu-jitsu training until 2005. When I got introduced to it officially through the Army. But I knew some basic stuff. I knew the Kimura. I knew how to put someone in a guillotine choke if they try to tackle me, things like that. But if all you're doing is what we call, original JKD, which was how Bruce Lee was fighting in in the late 60s and early 70s. If that's all you're doing, and you're just doing the Wing Chun energy drills and things like that, and keeping the original JKD, then man, you're missing out on a lot of stuff that's just not going to be what you're doing. Just ain't going to be functional in a real fight.
100%, man. And guys are training in MMA nowadays, not just guys like you and I and the guys listening here, but also criminals. Like people don't really seem to grasp that, and I always hound guys with that. Look, if you're just boxing, like you're definitely a force to be reckoned with. And you've got that old saying, boxer will beat a grappler, and a grappler will beat a boxer. In other words, like if you're really good at one, then you don't have to study the other. No, that's bullshit. Like you really should be cross-training in both. And to your point, man, like anyone at a high level of martial arts, whether it is Pure Water JKD, Pure Water Wing Chun, like they've all also studied some form of grappling, whether that's the old school Jiu-jitsu or the new school BJJ or Judo or whatever. You got to be proficient in all areas. So, I think what you're saying here is...
And that was... Go ahead. To kind of get back on the JKD thing, that's what Bruce's whole philosophy was, and a lot of your original JKD guys or guys that still train JKD and only train JKD. They're trying to say they try to say, hey, we're living by Bruce's philosophy. Well, no, really, you're not, because JKD was never meant to be an art.
Right.
It was meant to be a concept on how to train. Bruce even said the worst thing he ever did was give it a name, because that, that limited it to, it's this. This is JKD. And so, and I don't want to knock anybody, but a lot of your JKD guys, they talk about full contact, but you never really see them doing it.
Right.
You never see them doing it. And that's kind of why I stepped away from the JKD scene. As far as promoting it and teaching it and all that, I don't do that anymore.
I think it'll only take you so far. It's important to learn the basics, and you can definitely learn the basics of striking and distance management and stuff from an art like JKD. But eventually, in my opinion, you have to leave that and step into the modern arena of combatives and combat sports, even to really learn about how to fight, how to protect yourself out in the streets or on the battlefield or whatever.
Right.
So
yeah, definitely.
Just kind of closing up here, man, and this has been a really good talk. I mean, you've been overseas, obviously, and I'm assuming some sticky situations. Is there anything that you can take from your deployments to give to us that you can tell us, hey, in a bad situation, these are some tips for you guys that'll help keep you safe out there on the streets?
So the first thing that I always teach everybody, and this touches on exactly what you're talking about, but first thing I always teach everybody is situational awareness.
And it's so important.
Situational awareness will... So many times, that right there alone, just making eye contact with somebody out in the street or in a bar, if they walk in and looking for a soft target or wherever you're at, if they're looking for a soft target and you look up at them and put eyes on them, that right there may save your life.
Mm-hmm.
Just that right there. That may make them aware to where they're like, well, that guy's already seen me or he's looking at me. I'm going to go to someone who's maybe looking at their phone or talking to somebody, not paying attention to their surroundings. So the Army philosophy is, we're not trying to train MMA fighters. We're not trying to train UFC fighters. We're not trying to train someone who can go out in the street and kick everybody's ass. We train you enough to stay alive until your buddies get there.
Mm.
So not only having situational awareness, but also when you go out with guys that that are going to have your back.
Yeah.
Guys that can have your back. if you go out with, hypothetically, a situation might be, you might be married and you go out with your wife's friend and her husband. Well, if you don't know your wife's friend's husband, if you don't know him, and maybe, he's a guy who's never been in any type of physical confrontation at all in his life, then you're out with your wife who you have to protect, your wife's friend who probably can't fight or doesn't care or anything like that. And then you got this guy over here that you're also with that's not going to have your back if say somebody tries to mug you or something like that. So when you're going out, go out with people who are caring. If you're going out to eat or going to a restaurant, go out with people who have trained or people who can still carry, things like that.
That's a good tip. Never fight alone, and keep the company of warriors.
Yeah, definitely. Surround yourself with people who you train with or train.
Yeah, I mean, it's the old saying, right? Like eagles flock together. It's so true.
Oh, definitely.
So, Brad, I got to say, man, I really appreciate you coming on here. You've given us some great tips. It's really cool to talk to a guy who's been doing this as long as you, and someone who obviously, when I talk to you, I've talked to a lot of martial artists out there. You obviously know what you're talking about, and you've been training guys the right way. So, thank you for your service, man, and thank you for coming on, dude. It's been an honor.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you having me on, and it was really great.
I'll definitely reach back out to you in the future. Now and again things pop off, and we want to get expert commentary on it. So if you don't mind, I'll definitely keep you in the contact list here.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
Awesome,
yeah, appreciate it.
Well, stand by for me. I'm gonna close out here, and we'll chat for a second before we go our separate ways.
Hey, sounds good, Will.
All right, guys. So that was Brad Jenkins of KY-Combatives, U.S. Army Master Hand-to-Hand Combatives Instructor. It was a fucking pleasure talking with this guy. He obviously knows what he's talking about. As I said just now, I've talked with a lot of martial artists, and I kind of have a pretty good BS detector. This guy has no BS about him. He really knows his stuff. You can go ahead and follow him on Instagram, Brad Jenkins, KY-Combatives. I'm going to throw that link right here, right now. Check him out. I would definitely follow his page. He also has a lot of good resources. Reach out to him if you have any questions. He seems like a very reasonable and open guy, willing to talk to pretty much anybody and guide them along the way to get into some proper training. Whether you're civilian, military, first responder, he is a good resource to have. And obviously, if you live in Kentucky, I would definitely reach out to him and try to go train. Alright guys, I'm going to catch you on the next video. Don't forget about the Gutter Fighting Secrets Secure Mindset podcasts that we've got going on. They're probably going to end up being Monday nights from now on. And obviously you can follow me on Instagram. I'm also on TikTok. So if you just can't get enough Gutter Fighting Secrets, boom, we've got you covered. Alright guys, please remember that you are your first and last line of defense, and I'll see you guys. Cheers, mother flowers.